Scott, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn. So excited to have Delvina Miremadi-Baldino, PhD, the Resilience Strategy and Impact Director at the Maine Resilience Building Network, joining us today. She's going to talk to us about spreading hope, healthy outcomes from positive experiences. Through new research on the science of positive childhood experiences, we know both negative and positive experiences impact brain development. This training will offer those working with children and families practical guidance in implementing a strengths based approach that identifies, celebrates, promotes access to key positive childhood experiences. The presentation will cover the research behind PCEs and their mitigating effects on adverse childhood experiences, the 4 building blocks of hope, and the power of the brain to heal. We will also introduce some ideas for incorporating the HOPE framework into practice. Participants will leave with a deeper understanding of the science of PCEs and how to promote access to positive experiences through the building blocks of hope. So happy to introduce you to Delvina Miremadi-Baldino. Welcome, Delvina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Welcome, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your lunch, and I look forward to sharing this hour with you. I am going to kind of walk through the science of PCEs, or positive childhood experiences. I think we all know and have heard quite a bit about adverse childhood experiences, so I'm excited to be able to build upon what you may already know or maybe don't know as much about positive childhood experiences, and really gain this kind of hopeful lens through which we can begin to help our children not just focus on healing the trauma, but really healing and moving forward with hope, and our role in that as their people in their lives, and the relationships that we are able to offer, and how we can cultivate for them. I know this is not our first Lunch and Learn with you all, so as you know, I'm part of the Maine Resilience Building Network, a public health nonprofit in Maine that really is focused on cultivating positive experiences and helping build community resilience by really teaching some of these concepts that we're talking about today, and really looking at how can we really use this information and this research to change our daily connections and interactions. So how we kind of intentionally show up for the people in our lives, how we show up at work, how we show up in our homes and with the youth that we interact with, and do it in a very intentional way that has been shown in the literature to promote more positive experiences and better mental health and well-being moving forward. So we'll kind of bring all of that together today. As part of that, I just want to share that what we're going to be talking about today can sometimes bring up some personal reflection, whether it's adverse experiences you may have had or that have been part of your life in some way, shape, or form, as well as maybe learning more about these positive experiences and the benefits that they can have, and thinking maybe just reflecting on how you may or may not have had as many of those as would have been beneficial for you. So just know that we want you to take care of yourself, and if at any point in time you need to step away or do what is well for you, then please do that. As I mentioned, we know a lot about kind of the adverse childhood experiences. The data really has shown that more adverse childhood experiences lead to poorer mental health outcomes in the future, more substance use, incarceration, and a variety of other risk behaviors. So this is coming from the original 1998 study of adverse childhood experiences. And, that's when they were looking at the results from 17,000 employed HMO members from California. So as we begin to, build on this science and really reflect on it, it's important to point out some of the limitations and that came from this original study. Just thinking about, these were all employed participants who had insurance. And so what we know and what we found from that is also something that we want to consider in terms of was a huge population that was also left out that may have even been experiencing worse health outcomes. The study was kind of ongoing, and so it's now in coordination with the CDC. And what we begin to discover through this work is that ACEs are common. ACEs are in something that increases our risk for negative health outcomes. It really disrupts normal brain development. So the longitudinal nature of this study is really important for us understanding how adverse childhood experiences changes brain development and how it changes our stress response. And so we've been able to look at that and measure it over time and really understand the long-term impacts of the brain and physiological developments of it. As part of that, the really key findings that came is that there's a direct link between, this childhood trauma and adult onset of chronic disease. And I won't spend too much time on this slide. I know this is not all new information to you all, but I just want to kind of ground us in how this all started. Again, and keeping in mind, we often start with this deficit model. This is kind of human nature and how we address problems, right? We identify what the problem is and we try to get to the root cause of the problem, which is extremely beneficial in us understanding the problem and beginning to address it. And as we move further upstream, now that we have this kind of foundational knowledge, right, we're really trying to move the research further to understand how these kind of adverse childhood experiences and positive childhood experiences can really come together to tell the story of not just trauma, but healing, right? How can we use both of those? And so, for this presentation, I just want to, kind of take the old science of just ACEs and really think about how the new science in the last 15 or 20 years is really looking at bringing together the ACEs and positive childhood experiences. So ACEs and thinking about it across the lifespan and the various ways it impacts an individual, and then how we can use that for resilience and healing. So here we're really just looking at kind of asking these questions, right? Of like how this toxic stress from ACEs can damage the children's developmental brain. The flip side of that was how can we use positive childhood experiences also to understand how we heal the brain? Really looking at the impact on the body, right? We know that this toxic stress affects our short-term and long-term health. We also understand that positive experiences can shift the physiology and our ability to, regulate when we are dysregulated. So how can we, again, think about that from this perspective of healing? And really how this kind of resilience research shows us that our brains are malleable. Our bodies have this capacity to heal through these positive childhood experiences, and that we can really build these practices based on this research so that we are creating environments, we are creating engagement opportunities, we're creating relationships that are helping to heal based on all of this science. So this is all coming from, this new research that is really focused on these positive childhood experiences and the impact of those. So what we found was that positive childhood experiences are incredibly important and create a significant opportunity to both buffer and support brain development. So that original study looked at adult mental health and correlated that to the presence of positive childhood experiences. And so more and more studies are beginning to use that model to further validate the findings I'm going to share with you. But really, the early evidence indicated that better adult physical health, as well as cardiovascular health, was correlated with these positive childhood experiences. So we'll go into more detail in a minute. When we look at where the positive childhood experiences science comes from, right? How did they even take the ACEs and then turn it into the positive childhood experiences, the PCEs? So the science of the positive is really the study of how positive factors impact culture and experience. So this focuses on how to measure and grow the positive. And this has been around for much longer. Over the last decades, has been applied in communities and agencies and businesses. And it's based on this core assumption that the positive is real. It's something that's worth growing in ourselves and our families and our communities. And when we do intentionally put in that effort to grow the positive, we have significant beneficial impacts. And so when we look at just positive experience as a whole, we know that they promote children's health and well-being. They allow them to force stronger relationships and connections. They cultivate positive self-image and self-worth. They provide the sense of belonging and build skills that promote resilience. So from that, Christina Bethel out of Johns Hopkins University is one of the major researchers in PCEs, defined a positive childhood experience as feeling safe in our families to talk about emotions and things that are hard and feeling supported during hard times. So some examples of that might be being able to talk openly to a family member or a caregiver about feelings of acceptance or being supportive, the belief that family stood by them during difficult times, feeling safe and protected by an adult in their life, particularly at home, and really thinking about outside of the home as well, the role that friends play, having that supportive friendships, that sense of belonging, connection to a larger group. So many ways in which we are thinking about how these positive experiences can play out in a child's life. And from that, right, the researchers and her kind of came up with this measurement of these 7 childhood experiences. And so when we talk about the study and the findings we're going to reflect on, we're referring to the results from the measurement that Christina Bethel came up with that asked these questions: ability to talk to family about feelings. So kind of this thoughts, feelings, and experiences are shared openly and honestly. So this could be through a parent checking in every so often, encouraging their children to share. It could be identifying kind of emotions and promoting that kind of emotional intelligence. Another one is that they felt that family stood by them during difficult times. When there was a difficult experience, that the child, the parent offered support, the child felt supported, their presence of the adult was there, enjoyment in participating in community traditions. So traditions generally allow us to feel like we're part of a greater whole, and that having these traditions in childhood really create a bind or a bond to kind of connect them to something, their family, and even taking that family out into the community and connecting them to something greater. It's also part of kind of celebration and tradition. It's predictable, there's stability in that. And then there's celebration, which we know, of course, comes with a lot of kind of positive memories and joy. Feeling of belonging in high school. And so high school can be a very challenging experience, and belonging can be found in many places. So this sense of kind of belonging in particular, during this high school experience, through either extracurricular activities, joining clubs and groups, engaging with peers in meaningful ways, that this feeling connected and having these positive relationships during this key developmental time is really important to cultivating these positive childhood experiences that will in the long term have an impact, positive impact. The feeling of being supported by friends. So really, similar to being supported by family, this is really about, children feeling support from their friends. And that there may be a parental person who can help them navigate these difficult, relationships, or an adult, how to navigate, arguments, feeling left out, uninvited, all of judgment, bullying, all of these, all of these positive childhood experiences are often coupled with some kind of adult relationship that's helping them to learn how to build and support that. Having at least two non-parent adults who genuinely care. So we know that the parental or the a caregiver role model is really important, but the non-parental is essential as well. And so that these adults could be teachers, counselors, coaches, mentors, friends of a parent, but they have a positive influence with this healthy attachment. They feel that they're, trustworthy and can be confided in. And then finally, the feeling safe and protected by an adult at home. So feeling safe and protected can look like many different things, and not to be kind of something for us to be judged, but really in general, feeling physically cared for or protected from danger. And so this, again, just to kind of highlight those concepts and really think about, we're talking about both family elements as well as, non-family, and that both of those contribute to this experience of, positive positive experiences, positive relationships, positive engagements, that become kind of the culmination of what that assessment is looking for. We know that, the brain is malleable, and so much like how we've found that ACEs can disrupt, right, our brain development, we know that positive childhood experiences can then help buffer the impact of that. So looking at, how PCEs can support our stress response or our nervous system to become more regulated. If it is dysregulated, it's something that can be altered to become regulated again, right? So when we have positive experiences in different areas, these increased connections that allow us to not be primed to go into that stress response so quickly can help us to create kind of this opportunity to decrease our hypervigilance, feel more security, have more of that peace and balance, create a space where we have more choice in our response, as opposed to being, really reactive, because our nervous system is kind of controlling kind of how we're moving and how we're responding. And so there are many ways in which we can utilize the strategies and the science of positive childhood experiences and resilience to undo what has been done through these adverse childhood experiences, as well as kind of rewire the brain in a way that promotes healing and allows for health and well-being moving forward. So given that, we can look at kind of how this all comes together in the work that we're doing in communities, the work that you're doing, and ultimately, right, how we can help these youth to develop in a way that's going to promote health and well-being and better mental health in the future. So really, these positive childhood experiences are what we can call kind of that nutrients in the soil, right? So we have these protective factors, these elements of a child's life that we know are going to lead to better mental health, physical health, resilience, confidence, employment success. And so we can begin to cultivate a soil, an opportunity for these experiences, these enriching kind of experiences that then lend itself to allow for these opportunities for children to develop in healthy ways. When we do that, the results of the study were quite astonishing. And so what they found, we'll kind of walk through some of the results and the research around positive childhood experiences and reflect back on what that measurement was really looking at, and how really the simplicity of the role of our work and our interactions every day, how we can really begin to think about those in an intentional way that has this profound effect on the children that we're working with. So looking at the research, really what they found was that positive childhood experiences protect future mental health in a dose-dependent way. So this means that the more positive childhood experiences someone has, the lower the odds of poor mental health as an adult. That seems like it fits, right? That makes a lot of sense. But what's really profound about the research is that this was the case regardless of the number of ACEs. So before we get there, right, only about half of the people who recall 0 to 1 or 2 PCEs reported positive mental health in adulthood, but the number steadily rose as the number of positive childhood experiences, with almost 90% of those recalling 6 to 7 positive childhood experiences reporting positive mental health. So this really indicates that there's a real relationship with positive childhood experiences and future positive adult mental health. Newer studies are also showing that there's an impact, kind of a cumulative response, or that this over time can build upon each other as well. And this is what I was mentioning before. What was really, really profound was that if we look at the intersection of adverse experiences and positive experiences, the results are still really good. Those folks who faced significant adversity in childhood with 4 or more ACEs still experience good mental health with high levels of positive childhood experiences. So this is kind of that buffering, right? That these results really exemplify the protective nature of positive childhood experiences, even in the face of adversity. So basically, the youth with higher positive childhood experiences develop brains that allow them to become adults with brains that are able to seek and get the care and help that they need, right? Which improves symptoms, and even, if mental health is present, that they are able to seek care and get the help that they need. People with more PCEs were also more commonly employed, giving them better access to insurance. So because they're more likely to have kind of health insurance and be employed, right, these people with positive childhood experiences are going to be less likely to delay medical care due to cost or other reasons. So really the positive childhood experiences are extremely beneficial to the youth, not just across the country or in general in these studies, but also looking at the youth in our state. So if we think back to what positive childhood experiences consisted of and the questions that were asked, right, about having a caring adult, having a supportive, environment in their school, right, a good high school experience. So when we look at the data in Maine, right, and look at data that parents helped them succeed, right, the difference and kind of the difference that this support had on their kind of risk-taking behaviors, considering suicide in the past year, using marijuana in the past 30 days. But there is a significant difference when youth have these experiences of, receiving support from adults, having a caring school environment. So this is really putting it into practice and what that actually looks like and how it impacts our youth in Maine. Again, this data from the CDC, feeling like they matter in their community. Again, if you think back to, can I have that on the next slide? No. If you think back to what they were measuring, right? The connectedness, the belonging, the friendships, right? A lot of that, right? Parents showing up for them, or a caregiver, or a teacher, right? All of those interactions that are being asked in that positive childhood experience survey aren't these complicated programs that they were part of or not part of, or, they were these really, I say simple, but important, right? Engagement opportunities, relationships that made them feel like they matter, that, helped and supported them through difficult times, that taught them the skills they needed to navigate. When we see how that impacts youth, this data from our state, 65% less likely to consider suicide, 57% less likely to have had depressive symptoms in the last year. I mean, that's incredible, right? Incredibly protective, just the nature of students feeling like they matter. And you can look at, less likely to engage in vaping, prescription misuse, drinking, smoking, and a variety of other risk behaviors. We also know that among juvenile offenders, so this is coming outside of the state of Maine, but an important point to make that high ACE scores are associated with increased reoffending. High PCE scores are associated with decreased recidivism. Sorry, that always catches me up. And that is measured both by rearrest and also reconviction. So these positive childhood experiences, right, play a role in not just how these youth engage in risk behaviors and their mental health, but the long-term effects as well in juvenile delinquency. And then just kind of wrapping it up, when we think about some of the biggest concerns, right, that are really recognized across the country by the CDC, these social determinants of health, right, where we're making our investments, that looking back at these questions, right, if we say social connectedness is recognized by the CDC as one of the 5 priority social determinants of health, right? Youth connectedness has a lasting effect, right? We know that when youth feel connected at school and at home, they're 66% less likely to have experienced health risk behaviors. Now, looking at these questions, the role of positive childhood experiences is about connection, right? It's about how we show up for each other, how we show up for the youth in our life, how we invest in those interactions, those daily, relationships. And that, not every child is going to come from a family that is warm and supportive and accepting, and that some children live in homes where, they don't feel emotionally and physically safe. But what this kind of shows us is that the friends and communities that these children live in can also be sources of positive childhood experiences. And that, these sense of connection and belonging to a larger group, to, a neighborhood, a church, a club, community traditions, relationships with non-parental adults, that these have a significant impact on their well-being. And again, just to highlight, really challenging our assumptions, right? That eliminating adversity automatically results in good health outcomes. But many people report lower adversity in childhood and still have poor mental health, right? And that that there's more to the story, right? And so what we're really finding out is that positive childhood experiences matter either just as much, if not more. And so basically, the more positive childhood experiences you have, the better off you are. And that a high ACE score doesn't mean you're doomed, right? You may have enough positive childhood experiences to counteract those effects. Now, what a low ACE score doesn't mean you're in the clear either, right? So we really want to look at both. We want to consider how are ACEs part of your story, and how are PCEs part of that story, or how can we, more importantly, how can we intentionally, right, create environments, relationships, interactions, engagements that really promote these positive childhood experiences as a way of healing and fostering a resilient path forward. So we're going to move into kind of how we do that, really putting these PCs into practice and what that looks like. But in order to do that, we also want to just reflect on our own kind of unconscious, kind of intuitive responses to the world around us, and understand that we all share in this experience of having a more type 1 thinking. Our brains are really designed for protective reasons, to focus on what's wrong, to kind of find the things that are unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and really identify those first. Now, this is, again, it's kind of this unconscious way that we walk through the world. It's this really primitive part of our brain that's in charge of that. And so we need to be more thoughtful and intentional when we're showing up in an effort to really slow down, right? And really think about having more calculated, conscious, right? Problem-solving thinking, right? For most of us, finding these risk factors is going to be much easier than finding these kind of type 2 positive experience type thinking, right? And so noticing that we have this negativity bias is a great start, because that awareness is going to help that process of really slowing down, allowing us to kind of consciously focus on strengths, individual characteristics, right? To not make kind of as many snap decisions, and just know that our brains are naturally going to be drawn to the adversity, but there's always positive, right? And that we can cultivate positive intentionally, rather than get sucked into what is maybe an adversity that we think that, fixing that, focusing on that is going to resolve the child's, challenges or promote healthy development in the future. And what the research tells us is that's not where our efforts need to be spent. That there's a time and place for that, of course, but in order to promote really health and resilience moving forward, we need to really focus on this type 2 thinking, this really kind of conscious, intentional, positive lens. And so this is where we're really looking at our relationships with one another, right? Having kind of safe and equitable, stable environments, social and civic engagement, and kind of emotional growth. So really looking at how can we put these positive experiences into play in these areas of our interactions with youth, the environment, our engagements, and then the promoting emotional growth. So if we're looking at kind of the 4 building blocks of hope: relationships with other children and adults through interpersonal activities. So this building block really emphasizes the importance of nurturing supportive relationships, thinking about these early kind of secure attachments, the bonds between parent and child or caregiver and child, these supportive relationships outside of these caregivers with adults, teachers, and also other peers. So where is there opportunity really to cultivate that, right? Thinking about places, people, interactions that you have in your work, right? What that may look like, and how you can kind of utilize that time to be intentional about that interaction. So for example, trying to, ask open-ended questions and really listen, right? To really create these relationships that are built on trust, have, certain systems in place where, you're sharing, as you're starting your interaction with them, like what's going on today, or how are you feeling, or, there's different ways of rosebud or thorn or thumbs up, thumbs down, just having something predictable, creating the kind of relationship that invites sharing and trust building and opportunities for youth to feel like they can, share and really matter. The environment that, when we look at all children, right, needing kind of this safe and stable, protective and equitable kind of environment, place to live and learn and play, that safe environments are both kind of thinking about physical space, but we also are considering kind of that psychological safety as well. So, providing and offering kind of equitable access, right, and opportunities for safety, and how that may look and feel different depending on the child that you're working with, on their ACEs, on their experiences, having kind of stimulating environments, right? So how are you bringing and considering the environment through which that interaction is happening? So here's some just, ideas about what that kind of may look like or sound like, helping, children really find places outside if it's not in the home, thinking about where is there a safe place for them to be, to play, helping families in that process. Free time, right? Just allowing for free play, free talk, free whatever, right? And giving opportunities for that. The engagement, thinking about how do positive childhood experiences, right, kind of happen within the context of their community. So, as they develop within these kind of homes, then as they grow up, the community becomes more and more important. So whether it's, daycare, music class, reading at the library, how is all of the community assets being taken advantage of as a way of helping to cultivate these experiences? So here's some more just, circle time, family group meetings, after school activities. And then finally, the emotional growth opportunities. So, children definitely learn by watching and mimicking the behaviors of the adults in their lives, right? Modeling. And so having kind of that social emotional component, both through modeling the appropriate ways to express emotions through words and actions, being kind of respectful so that kids know it's okay to be mad and sad and disappointed, really accepting the awareness, and then helping to give them the language to regulate, right? There's lots of strategies to help children kind of build that self-regulation and that emotional intelligence, and providing environments where children are able to do that, to play, to express emotions, to learn how to regulate. And so some examples are, just creating really personalized interactions. Again, that unstructured playtime, setting boundaries, but, really holding space for them to experience the range of emotions without trying to jump in and fix it right away. All of that. And then, as we're kind of coming to an end today, really, again, just highlighting that, what we've learned from the research and what we continue to learn as we build on this field of research is that the absence of positive childhood experiences may be more damaging to long-term health than the outcomes than the presence of ACEs. So these ACEs are extremely important, and these positive childhood experiences are really important, and we all play a role in helping to cultivate that through each and every kind of interaction we have with youth, the environments we're creating, the way in which we are, engaging in our communities. And so we have a huge opportunity, despite the ACEs that they may have faced, to provide healing and cultivate, a pathway for resilience. And so that is the end of the presentation today. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have at this time. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Hey, Delvina, this is Ginger. One thing, my husband and I talk about, like healing our inner child and try to have positive experiences now as an adult, even though it's obviously we're past our childhood. Is that recommended? Try to still have happy experiences in your adulthood to keep your overall mental health up.
Of course, of course. Yeah, all of that science, when we look at those changes in the brain, because really what positive childhood experiences are doing are, right, giving us a brain that is less overreactive to stress, to our stress response. We're kind of changing, how we're able to show up to stressful events, how we're able to kind of consider, different perspectives, maybe look at it from different angles, all of those little elements. That change in the brain goes on forever, right? So we can change our brain. It's not what we used to think it was, which was our brain only develops to a certain age and then it stops. We know through neuroplasticity now that our brain is always changing. So every effort that you make, regardless of your age, you're promoting, further health, well-being, and resilience. Any other thoughts, questions? I love that conversation though, that you have that with your partner. That inner child is always the challenge, right? And we're always healing that.
For sure. Thank you.
I see something in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the chat. It says from Jill McPhail. Thanks, Jill. Thank you. I agree that positive experiences help the brain growth and kindness throughout life is important. Yeah. So, getting out to Cabbage Island or going to the drive-in, we're just healing, right? That's what we can say.
Mhm.
So that's awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything you want to talk about? If not, we can give you 10 minutes of your day back. Delvina, thank you so much for joining us. Keeney, thank you. Sam, everybody, we really, really appreciate you coming. We had over 50 people, so that's pretty awesome. And I appreciate everyone's time and hope your summer's going good and that you're not too waterlogged. So lots of thank yous for you, Delvina, in the chat. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you for the work that you do.